Hey gearheads, welcome back. Yes, I'm gonna act like nothing's weird and I haven't been missing for 2 years, because that story is too long and I have to save it for a whole nother vlog. So today we're gonna do a steering wheel on the Vandal. Check it out. So here's the story, short and sweet. I've never really liked the steering wheels that come in the 99 through 02. The rounded shape to them, kind of odd. Probably so much don't like them because I've seen the ones that come in around 05, 03 and up. Was it 03 to 07 or so? To look more like a star, like a 4-star. They're a better design, they look better. But the problem is though, the splines are different. So you can't just take the 2005 steering wheel and throw it on here. Let me show you a 2005 steering wheel. Here we go, this is the steering wheel I'm talking about. This is a 03 to 07, not sure exact years, but I know it's after 03. 03, everything started changing in the bodies of these vehicles. But see, it's more squared off. I just like the look of these much better. I chose a style that didn't have the buttons, the stereo, because I didn't feel like running them and didn't really feel like a need for them. Usually you have issues with them with the aftermarket radios, blah, blah, blah. If I decide I want the buttons, I can always change that later. I just wanted this one, this look, this style. So the reason you can't just take this off of a 2005 and bolt it on a 2001 is because the splines where they go on are different. The little splines where you bolt them on are different. So that's what we're going to work on today. I'm going to throw the steering wheel in the truck and see how it works out. This right here is a 2001 steering column that I used to mock out and test it out. How I got that newer steering wheel on here is by changing out the splines. What I did is went to the junkyard. I took this upper half here, looks like a spindle, the splined part. This is the ball where it pivots inside here. And I removed this piece from the junkyard off of like a 2005, so the steering wheel would fit on the old column, and I swapped it in there. But that's all words and sounds confusing. What we're going to do is actually go through the process in the truck, in the Vandal now, and put the steering wheel on it so you can see how it goes. But just to show you a little more information, before I did that, I tried actually pressing off the spline part off the steering wheel, and that doesn't work. The steering wheel is cast onto it, so it doesn't work that way. So the spline part is the biggest speed bump that people run into. Next issues you're going to have is the newer steering wheel. See, the airbag wire usually comes through here. The newer steering wheel has a hole here instead of there. So I'll show you what we're going to do for that. And then also the newer steering wheel has 2 plugs for the airbag, 2-stage, and the old one is 1. And I'll show you a couple options of what to do on that. Tools, a couple tools you're going to need. One is you can go borrow this kit from a auto parts store. What is it? Model, there we go, 648748. Or if you do it a lot or plan on doing it more often, then you go ahead and buy it online. The same thing at the, online is about $20 cheaper to buy it, but it has the whole shebang for pulling off different steering wheels. Should have the tools to hold the pressure plate down. Sometimes the locking plate you got to hold. This is, I'll show you in a little bit here, to remove the pins, the pivot pins in the side of the column. Very handy tool to have. All of these tools I've had before. I have them loose usually, like there's my old one, but this kit was so nice that I had to go step it up and buy the whole kit. I'll leave a link for that in the description. You also need some pliers to remove the ring like that, and Torx, what is it, a 25, a T25 and a T30. But I think better than these sockets would be an actual screwdriver or a bit set, because I have an issue with the socket fitting in one of the holes where I have to remove a bolt at. You'll see that. All this will make more sense as I show you and take my steering column apart in the truck. Before we get started, make sure to be cautious, be aware that airbag, there's all kinds of safety warnings everywhere about those things blowing up in your face while you're working on the column. So do that part at your own risk, or don't do it at all, whatever. Don't take my notes, because I'm used to taking too many risks, and if that thing blows up in my face, I'll let you know. But disconnect the battery. I'm going to pull the fuse for it. If you look on the panel, it comes off the left side between the door it'll show you airbag fuse, 15 amp airbag fuse right in here. I'm going to de-energize the airbag system. So the first thing we need to do is get this airbag out of the way. And there's two different methods. For one, for the older version that's on here, and then for the newer version. But let me go back to the open steering wheels to get a better view of what I'm about to do. As you know, this is the older steering wheel, right? You can see the hole here and hole here. That's where the airbag goes on and locks in. This is the newer airbag, but they both work the same. These pins go in there, and you see this notch? Well, that notch locks in to that bar you see in there. It's like a spring. So on the older steering wheel, flip it over. You'll have to rotate it until you can get something in here like a screwdriver, probably a larger screwdriver than this. But you'll want to go in there and pry out. When you pry out, do this one-handed. When you pry out, it moves that spring. See it moving? It moves the spring off the clip so it releases the airbag. That's how it works for the older steering wheel. On the newer one, it's a little easier to get to. You don't have to really rotate it. You have to look inside that hole. I don't think you can see it from this, but if you look inside that hole on the side of the steering wheel, you'll see the same spring. I just take a small, real small flathead, or you can use like a Allen key or something. Anything it takes to go in there and just push. This has to wedge in, but you just push. Here's an example here. Like an Allen key, or this one's actually a Torx. But as long as it's small enough to fit in that hole, works real well because you don't have to line anything up like you do a flathead. And you just push it and pull. There's one-handed again. Push in, pull out on the bag. See how it comes out. And then remove it, push it back in, it locks back in. Now removing the airbag. I remember I showed you on the other one. I'm going to take a flathead, put it from behind here, and try it. But I'm going to need both my hands, so let me set this down. Also rotated the steering wheel so that I could get to the hole in the back, the opening for the screwdrivers going on the back. Now we'll take that nut in the middle there that holds the steering wheel on. So a 21 millimeter fits good. Pretty simple. Unhook the horn. The little thing right there is the horn. Get everything out of the way. Now we'll get a puller on there. Pull the steering wheel off. Now let's slip the puller in. Comes in that kit I showed you earlier. Let's get the right size bolts with the right threads. Let's see if I can do this with one hand. I need my mount this thing back on my head. That would help. One-handed. There's that horn button wire there. That's pretty much what it looks like once it's on there. The newer style steering wheel is slightly different. Instead of being threaded into the steering wheel, it'll hook. And that kit comes with the arms that will hook into it to pull it off. And just rotate this. Pull the steering wheel off. Now the steering wheel's loose. Pull it off. Grab the airbag cable through it. Now when you get inside of here. So on the side over here, we're going to pull this is the lever that is the steering column up and down. And all you have to do is grab it about right there. Just grab it with some pliers and pull it out however you want to grab it. I'll try with my fingers first, see if I can pull it. There you go. That's what it looks like. Remove that. Allow you to get to the plastic here. Start removing that. If you need to move it up and down still, you can still stick your finger in there move it up and down. I don't remember right now how this is held together. I believe it's just latched together. It's the top half and the bottom half. I'm just going to squeeze it and look for the way to separate it like that. Don't see any screws in it right now. Let's try to unlatch it. There you go. Just latch this together. Be gentle with it. Try not to break it. Wiggle it. Might be a little bit easier if you took the panels off around it, but too late for that for me. There we go. And that boot for the shifter slips into that hole there. Around the boot. See that ridge right there? Slips in. I think to give us a little bit more room, I should go ahead and take this bezel off. So I should probably do that from the start. So keep that. That way it's out of the way. Have to throw the brake shifter down so you can get it out. It always hits the flasher button. That's it. Now we need to get in there with some snap ring pliers. Remove this snap ring. Holding this in place. If you don't have pliers, you could always use flatheads. I've gotten them off with flatheads before, using 2 pairs of flatheads. It's just not as quick, not as easy, but snap ring pliers are much faster. Now the clock spring, you'll notice it lines up 2 pieces of plastic there, and it'll line up the bottom there. And once you have that clip off, this will slide out. Just let it hang down for now. Next, we're going to just move this out of the way. And there'll be a clip behind it that we need to remove. I believe they call this a lock plate. We're going to press this down and then get the clip out from behind. This little clip here locks that plate on. It's spring loaded right now, so you can't get to it. So we'll put a tool on here that depresses that, allows us to remove that clip. Now move the shifter out of park so that we can reach this Torx bolt. There's also one inside here you can't see. And then there's one more down here. These two, this one and the one up here, you can reach without moving the shifter, but move the shifter out of park so that I can reach this one. We'll take those 3 bolts out and move this linkage out of the way. Now those 3 bolts are out. Move this out of the way as much as you can. I have to take the linkage off down low, whatever you have to do to move it out of the way, because what we're trying to get to is that pin right there, known as the pivot pin. There's one on each side. It's the pivot point of the steering column, how it goes up and down. There's the other one. But before we remove those pins, we got to make sure to relieve the pressure of this spring first, because that spring will pop out, push everything at us. So let's remove that spring now. Grab the shaft and pivot it back up. Get as much tension off the spring as we can. Now what I'm going to do is just use a pry bar I have no idea if they make a tool for this or not, but I'm going to grab near the bottom, furthest away from me on the spring, and put the pry bar into the coil and pry towards me. There's a nipple in there that I want to get it off of, and it's off the nipple now. Now there's no spring or any tension on the swivel of this to keep it up. Only catch is, this is the plastic piece that goes at the top right here to help align the spring, and then the spring shot off inside there. I gotta go chase it now. Magnet, made that pretty easy. And now that we have no tension, no spring tension in there, I'm going to put it all the way back down again. And there's 2 screws on the back here. This is the piece we're about to remove, but there's 2 screws here and here that we need to extract now. You gotta be careful, make sure not to strip them out. We have to turn the steering column to be able to get to them. So if you have the front end jacked up right now, it'd be an easy way to rotate the front wheels, or you could crank it, put a steering wheel, slide the steering wheel on and rotate it. I chose to take the 15mm nut down there behind the brake pedal on the steering shaft. You can take that bolt out and push the steering shaft, intermediate shaft out, and you'll be able to rotate it as needed. Now you'll see what we're rotating it for. We get back here, and that's where you'll find the bolt that we need to take out. It's a T25. It actually feels a little bigger than a T25, and it feels the T27 won't fit in it. So I'm gonna have to use a T25, but you get it done. Just do it slow and gentle. Don't strip it out. You strip it out, that is not fun to get out. And there's 2 of them on each side. Nice and slow. You can see the tab's been knocked in there to try to secure it into place, so it doesn't want to give it up very easily. There's also a Loctite on it. Probably would have helped to leave all the locking plate on here too, so that the shaft is a little more solid. This bolt doesn't just they call it press in there. It's actually got a little slot that it fits into. So it has to be removed all the way, not just loosened. That's what it looks like. Rotate the column, do the other side. This is what's locking the piece that we want to remove. These 2 pieces here are what's locking it onto the rest of the steering column. All right, now we pull the pivot pins on each side, one on each side. And we'll be able to open it up and take the shaft out. Make sure to be careful. These ball bearings here, they like to fall out and go everywhere. That's what this kind of stuff here is to do. Also the spring that was here, the locking plate, everything that was here was pushed up in there and holding the springs in place. So now that they're loose, be careful, because they will go everywhere. Now to remove the pivot pin. Here's the tool. Pivot pin removal tool. Again guys, I'll try to put the links to all of these tools in the video description. If I forget any, just make a comment, let me know, and I'll add the link. Or if any of the links quit working, just let me know. So smaller bolt will thread into the pivot pin. And once you got this smaller bolt threaded into the pivot pin, screw that down. I use a ratchet wrench on the larger nut there. So slow. It'll start extracting, pulling it out. A little pop you heard there is likely the tab that's bent over the pivot pin to keep it from coming out. you go. Pulls out like that. Now for the other side. Once those two pivot pins are out, remember, make sure the spring was out before then, otherwise this will all jolt out at you. But once the two pivot pins are out, well, this upper half here will come loose and allow us to take out the shaft that we need to exchange. Shaft out like that, swap in our new one. Now we're going back together, slip in the new shaft with the smaller splines for the new steering wheel. Slip it in the back. Remember, watch the bearings. Make sure none of them dropped out when you took it apart. One of them are missing. Start to slide it back together. Try to gently line everything back up. Putting these bolts back in now with T25 Torx bit. Remember, be gentle because the T25 fits kind of loose in there, and you don't want to strip it out. It's not fun. Ask me how I know. When I pulled that newer shaft out of the salvage yard, yeah, I stripped it. I was in a rush, didn't think nothing of it. Hit it with the 3/8 impact, stripped real quick. Once I get these two in, I'll go ahead and knock those pivot pins in the rest of the way. Put more Loctite on there if you feel, if you like it, if you'd like to. I'm not sure what the torque is, but it's probably going to be, judging by my ichrometer, it's going to be somewhere around there. I think if you tighten it up too much, you'll know. Like that. I can't flex it. When you tighten it up too much, you'll know because you can't flex it. Because it's supposed to pivot on the ball inside there. There we go. So you don't torque it down very tight at all. What I've been doing is just tighten down until it's too tight and then loosen it up just a bit until it rotates freely. You'll know better once you put the rest of it together. When you knock these pivot pins in, I'm just going to use a hammer, and this is an air hammer chisel, but anything you can get in there to seat them in. Now for these pieces that likely fell out of the front when we removed the shaft. This is like a bearing race that goes in the front. There was also one on the back that stayed on the shaft. I just left the one from the newer vehicle, newer truck on there. Push that in there. Supports the bearings. It's actually the race for the bearings to run on. But put that back where it should be. All the way seated up in there against the bearings inside there. Let me show you. Seated up in there. After that, this piece here pushes on the race, goes on that way. And after that will be a spring. Pushes on that piece. Turn signal on. Turn signal switch. Just those two bolts. Shift selector on. Put that spring back in that keeps the tension on the pivot. Don't forget the plastic nub there. What's on that side? I guess we could put it in together. And we've got to be able to carefully compress the spring and get it back on. There's a nipple on the bottom side there. You got to get it on. Slide that on. Now this piece has notches to line up with the splines on the shaft, so you got to make sure you get that right. And also this spindle that we're replacing here with the new splines on it, it has a notch in the top. That lets you know the steering wheel goes up. So I like to keep it pointed up the whole time I'm doing it, and I know that this should be about there when I'm doing it, putting it back together. See, the plastic piece will move, but this will not. So you got to put that in and make sure that this piece, this is for the horn wiring. You got to make sure it fits, the metal fits around it when you put it on. That's good. Now it's time for that clip. I'm just going to push it back on. See it? And if you stretched it out when you took it off, just pinch it back together. Slide it on. And just push it with as far as I can, my fingers first. Remember, there's a groove there that'll try to hold it and catch it. You want to get it past that groove onto the next groove. Well, it's going to get caught there either which way. There's the first groove. Okay, now go past it onto the next groove. There we go. We're not going to get all the way to the next groove yet because we have to compress that spring pressure. We have to compress it with that tool. Now this tool does not appear to be made for this lock plate, but I'm just making it work. Putting it on crooked, making it work. And since when you put it on crooked, of course it tries to bind, so I push on the other side with the screwdriver to help it get out of a bind. Tighten it down a little bit, push again, get out of the bind. That. I don't even know what the right tool looks like, but I guess it'd have to be pretty narrow. Putting that narrow long screwdriver through there, which actually has square sides to it, it allowed me to get this tool to grip on there to put across these two middle things here without breaking the plastic. That way more evenly pushed on it. I still had to push on the other side to balance it out. But anyway, whatever we had to do, get it down low enough to where we can get to that groove and lock that clip in. Next is that little wavy washer. You can see it. Now the clock spring, also, if you're afraid or concerned, or if you got a used clock spring and you don't know if this is centered, this thing needs to be centered. There's instructions on here of how to make sure to get it centered, but it will run out, it will stop. Just line up your alignment points, push it on, it's good. Now for the clip. Well, you could just start it this way, start pushing it on. It's kind of beveled right here, so it grabs it snugly. Put your tool on it, or use your flathead screwdriver, whatever you're going to use. Just push it into the groove back there. Actually, I usually wind up using a flathead anyways to check and make sure it's seated. It helps seat it more. See, it just seated more. Yep. There we go. All right. Now what this is for, this is, well, if it had steering wheel controls for the radio, it would go through here too, but this is to allow the electrical wire to spin with the steering wheel and not get all tangled up. So this clock spring does. So right now this one's for the airbag though. It's all this steering wheel has. That one's for the airbag, and then the little hole there is still, that's for the horn. All right, that's pretty much it for that. We got our splines now for our steering wheel. We can start putting our plastics back on, and don't get too excited yet. We don't want to jump the gun and be like, oh, that's it, now our new steering wheel fits, just go ahead and put it on. Here comes the next issue to run into. It fits now. The issue we have now is this clock spring, this little hardened plastic that's right here that supports, reinforces the wire for the airbag. Sticks out about 1/2 inch and pushes into the back of the steering wheel. Actually, you can see that black line I've drawn there. That black line is exactly what would have to be cut out to make clearance for it. I didn't like the idea of that, because then it just seems weak. I don't know, you could cut it and try it. I found another solution that I'd rather try. So the clock spring that's made for this steering wheel would come through here. And probably the best answer would be to grab that clock spring and put it on this column. More than likely it'll fit on there easily and resolve your issue and come through where it should. On the old steering wheel, it came through over there and there was a hole for it and no hole here, and it was fine. But using the new steering wheel, that becomes an issue. So I'll probably wind up finding a clock spring in the future and adapting it, making it work. If it's one that doesn't have just a single, you could always make it work. You could put the right connector on it and make it work. But what I'm going to do to make this one work for today, or we can make it not work at all, just cut it off and not use it, but I'd rather have a functional airbag. But I did it on the test setup, this test column, and it seemed to work, is remove this supportive collar here of plastic, cut it off, and just run the wires low and out of the hole in the steering wheel. And let me show you. I wouldn't recommend this for most everyone to do. You should probably get the right clock spring, but I wanted to take chances, so I'm going to do it. Just holding the Sawzall blade flat against the clock spring and cutting that plastic collar off. Of course, you can remove it and do the same. Cut this off, finish cutting this, and I'll show you what it's like afterwards and how it's going to fit. I know coming at this with a saw blade really likely freaked most of y'all out. There's about 1/4 of y'all though just as crazy as me and expected it. But so take a look at it though. It doesn't look as bad as you would think. Didn't hit the wires, and it just cut it off flush there, just making it to where it doesn't hit the bottom of the steering wheel. It's a supportive plastic collar, makes sense. I would like to have it too, but I noticed I did this on the test column and it came out pretty good. I guess I could fill that with some type of glue or RTV or something to support it, but it's just going to lay down about like that and come back up to go through the new steering wheel. Before I put that new steering wheel on though, I'm going to go ahead and put these plastics back on. Slide that shifter boot into it. Don't forget the clip to adjust the steering column angle. This pushes back in. Done. Yeah. Alright, now let's test fit that new steering wheel. Move the horn button out of the way. Feed that airbag line through the hole, bottom of the steering wheel. Go ahead and set it on there. Got the airbag cable coming through the bottom. Notch on the shaft there, the splined spindle shaft, whatever you want to call it. And the steering wheel is facing upward. Gently push it on. It's on there. Check the gap. Looks good. Well, you can't see it, can you? No, trust me, looks good. I guess you just have to take my word for it here. I doubt half of y'all will do it anyways, but the cable here for the airbag, I did it on the tip steering column, and I was able to see better without all the plastics on and with the column in my hand. And you can see that it doesn't, get the light over here, maybe you can see better. It doesn't rub. Here, before I put the light on, horn button. Stick it in that hole right there until it snaps. It'll snap in place. Stay there. Get that out of the way. All right, now the light. Yeah. I was able to watch it to see. I was afraid it might rub this cable, but the piece where I cut is rotating with the steering wheel. There's nothing really there to rub. You would have to hang down low here and rub the plastic part of the clock spring. You could glue it out of the way if you needed to, but I don't think there's much of a concern. As long as it twists up away from the clock spring down there on the bottom whenever we put the horn on, the airbag on. I think it'll work. All right, next is going to be go ahead and put the nut on, just be tightened down, then the airbag. Airbag is another issue. Tighten down the nut that holds the steering wheel. Doesn't have to be too tight, just tight. There you go. It's not moving anymore. One more brap. It's good. All right, that's the locking nut. We're good there. Now, new steering wheel, 03, 07 steering wheel is in the 99 through 02. Next catch is the airbag. Usually has two connectors like this when you find it. As you see, we only have one connector here in this 99 through 02. One yellow connector. I'm colorblind, can't tell you what color those are, but that's what they are. So my first thought, I was going to take the two connectors, splice them together, hook it up to one. People suggested that's a bad idea, won't function correctly. I said, okay, fine, I'll listen to you and try not to be as hard-headed as usual. So I'm working on other ideas. I haven't really finalized the best approach, the best idea or the least expensive, but I have one idea and the cure that I'll be doing for now, which is finding an airbag out of a 0304 HD 2500, some express vans. But you find the right one, it'll have one yellow connector. I'd like to find another answer though, besides just trying to find the one with one connector. There's got to be other answers, another way to this, like maybe changing just the cover off of the airbag or something. Because I believe also if you find the steering wheel out of the 0304 HD, it has the right splines that this truck originally had. You don't even have to change this out. So if you're lucky enough to find those, then you wouldn't have to even go through all this work. But I like to have other options in case I can't find one at the time. So for now, until I come up with another idea, I'll have to post that in the description or in the comments whenever and if ever I do. For now though, we're going to use this bag, slap it on there so we have a functioning airbag. Of course, I'm sure some of you are going to go with no airbag at all, just cut the wire to have the steering wheel. I prefer to have one. So let's slap it in there. Let's plug it in. Actually, this cover is a little rough. I might wind up changing it out later. But I routed the airbag wire up into a loop like that to aim it upwards. Plug it on. It's plugged in. Now go ahead and just push it on. There you go, it's on there. Not bad. Get a look in the daylight for a better view of it, but in my opinion, this style is all worth all the work. Clean it up a little bit. That's it.